Started, yes.
We're going to bring this meeting to order. Everyone take a seat. Our announcement on our agenda, and everyone has a copy, but you need to change the date of our VFW breakfast, which was pointed out by our lovely guest here, Richard, who serves at the VFW.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually the 15th. It's the third Sunday. And I put the 4th on here.
Oh, that's this weekend.
That's this weekend.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we'll be back in town. So our first event would be Neighbor to Neighbor, which is the Saturday. And we've adopted a new care receiver temporarily, one of our members that used to come here, because now she's with the other group. But that's who we're doing this Saturday. And that starts at 8:15. They serve a wonderful breakfast, and then we go out at 9 and help somebody in the neighborhood do minor repairs on their homes. And then our weekly West Rock cleanup, which is how we earn our money to support what we do for the neighbors. So when we need to buy this fan for Mary to replace in her bathroom, which is like $280, that's where the money comes from. We don't take grants. We actually go down to West Rock every weekend and clean up the miscellaneous trash around the facility.
Yes.
Then, of course, the VFW breakfast, which is January 15th, this coming Sunday. The last announcement is on behalf of your official neighborhood association. David and I were involved with helping them revise their bylaws to get a working set of bylaws so they can actually run their meetings efficiently. And they are having their general meeting on January 24th at 6:30, and it will be up here in this room. So if you're interested as being a member of the LNA, and the only criteria to be a member is if you've ever attended an LNA meeting. So if you've ever in your life attended an LNA meeting, you are an official member until proven otherwise. So,
Even if it was years ago?
if it was years ago, if you attended anything of the LNA years ago, if you're curious about the revised bylaws, and they are on their website and their Facebook page, you can read them.
That's that other controversial
That
group,
is that other
not to be
controversial group
confused
beside
with
us, yes. So I'm going to start our meeting. We're going to start with Mary and Jacob, and they are going to go over, it used to be Neighborhood Watch, which is now called
Neighbors Together.
Safe Blocks Program.
Neighbors.
Sort of. It used to be called crime prevention.
Oh, crime
And
prevention.
now we're at the Safe Blocks.
Oh, okay. So what happened to Neighborhood Watch?
That's one of our programs, but it used to be crime prevention.
Oh, okay.
And then it was community safety, and now it's
Okay.
Safe Blocks.
Okay, well, quit changing the name, will you?
Yeah.
Okay, so go for it.
All righty. Well, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Mary Thompkins, and I've been with the city for close to 17 years. And I'm one of the Safe Blocks program coordinators. And like I was just explaining to Shar, we've been through quite a transition. So we started off as crime prevention with the Office of Neighborhood Involvement. And some of you guys might remember ONI.
Oh, yeah.
I know Shar does.
Yeah.
Dave, you probably do as well. We've been around for a while. Then about 3 or 4 years ago, we transitioned to the Office of Community and Civic Life. And then just recently, we transferred from the Office of Community and Civic Life under the Office of Management and Finance, and we're now under the Community Safety Investment Team. So I'll just let that resonate with you guys. But we basically are the same people doing the same work. We just have different names, and we are very delighted to be here tonight. With Safe Blocks, as a Safe Blocks coordinator, I'll just talk briefly about what we've done so far in Lens. So I figure you guys might want to know a little bit about that. So just recently, we hosted a resource fair on September 9th at the DHS office right here on 82nd and Flaybell. And we've been working in that area for the last couple of years prior to the pandemic. We hosted a resource fair right before the pandemic, I'll say like that March, and right before the pandemic came in March, and I think before that we had just did a fair. And what we did was we cleaned up that the block right in front of the DHS and had folks move their tents and cars, and then we put tables and everything, and we brought resources to the community that included services such as Bybee Hope's Lake Center. We had SCI there. We had DHS workers there themselves, reaching out to folks who were suffering from food insecurity. We just had a number of vendors there that had food and resources for folks in the area. And so then just lately, this past year, we hosted that same resource fair again in the same spot and had over 25 vendors there. Again, just trying to reach out to East Portland and bring more services to the area, because we know that there's not a lot of services out here that are reaching out to low-income families, houseless community members, and folks that just are experiencing food insecurity. And so we're really keeping that relationship going with the outreach worker there at DHS, with Kaylin. And as soon as it gets warm enough, we're going to be hosting another resource fair, either at that location or at one of the other DHS locations, because the partnership that we've built with them is through the DHS Department of Welfare. So that's some of the things we've have done out in Lens in terms of reaching out to community and just trying to bring safe blocks to the community and being able to just provide folks with resources without having them, for folks that might not feel comfortable going inside of the office and reaching out and getting services that way. Safe blocks, like I said again, we also, some of the services that we do provide, Jacob and I just did Neighbors Together. We do a Neighbors Together training. And like you had mentioned, Char, you said, where did Neighborhood Watch go? Well, it transitioned to Neighbors Together, which is the same philosophy with the same type of services. And that, again, we're just meeting with neighbors to bring neighbors together to do community organizing within their own neighborhood. We also do crime prevention through environmental design. We did that with the DHS office, where we do a security assessment. We walk the building, look at lighting, landscaping, and provide services and information and advice on ways they can change the environment.
So how do people get a hold of you? Are you leaving cards?
Yes, I'm
or
going to
something?
leave a
Okay.
business card, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so that's one thing we did with DHS, and we do that for communities on a regular basis. So we reach out and work with folks on wanting to have the crime prevention through environmental design service as well. We also do an advocacy training where we meet with folks and help them be able to go in front of city council and be able to advocate for their neighborhood or advocate for services that they may be needing. For example, we worked with a neighbor that lives across the street from the DHS office that was experiencing a lot of issues with some of the folks outside in terms of crime and livability, parking issues, and things of that nature. We were able to help that person go in front of city council and be able to advocate for more services in that area and out here in Southeast Portland. We also provide personal safety training, because now that we are under the community investment team, we have partnered with other programs such as the Office of Violence Prevention, Rose City Self-Defense, and so we have a bigger umbrella of public safety services that we now can help provide people and make referrals. And so what I'm saying is we're working more so under a public safety umbrella. And so you'll hear more about that collaboration and how we're working after Mike Myers does his presentation on Safe Summer PDX, and you'll get to see how all the programs are now under one umbrella and working together. Did you want to add anything as well?
Real briefly, the crime prevention through environmental design service that Mary mentioned is where we come out and do site security assessments with people. And we'll do that for any property manager in the city. So if you're a homeowner, you're a renter, you own an industrial property, you manage an apartment building, you know, any kind of property management situation where you or someone that you're working with is in charge of making decisions about how to manage a property, and you'd like recommendations for improving security, we will come and do that for you free of charge. So please take us up on that. We want the business, so if you would like us to come out and take a look at your property and give you some recommendations on improving security, we were happy to come do that.
And which overall bureau are you now?
We're the Office of Management and Finance,
Okay.
and we're in the Community Safety Division, which Director Myers is the director of the division,
Okay.
and it's a newer part of the city. I guess I don't want to steal your thunder, maybe. I'll tell you all about it.
Yeah, you'll hear all about
Yeah.
it.
But we're under the Office of Management and Finance, which is a large kind of,
You may have said that, but it didn't strike me that as being a bureau, like
Yeah.
yeah, it's,
Portland Fire Bureau.
Right, yeah.
Portland
Well,
Police
that's-
Bureau.
yeah. You'll learn about that from Director
Cool.
Myers.
Yeah.
So anyway, please give us the business. We want the business. So
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I was talking about signage. There's a lot of people that have cyclone fence and people are just walking in their yards now. Does it help or is there any advantage to having signage that says no trespassing?
Yes.
Trespassers will be prosecuted or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We always recommend signage as a way to, discourage that type of behavior.
Okay.
So, absolutely.
It also can help with prosecution because it takes away the excuse that,
It wasn't
I didn't know I was
posted.
trespassing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I've got a neighborhood that's really unsafe. Can you guys come out? You said you talked to the neighborhood. How do you guys coordinate with the neighborhood to organize it? Because I've got a couple of different spots along the multi-use path that I think would be extremely helpful if you guys could gather everyone together. A lot of them don't speak English. A lot of them are really timid, shy. And to maybe help build that for these different segments along the NUP, because we're being absolutely invaded by homeless. And these are homeless or drug addicts, drug dealers, and criminals. And so anything that you guys could do to support us would be so valuable.
So I'll just give you an example of what we did today, just so you can kind of hear and see if that's something that you're looking for. We just met with the church on Woodstock, and they were also, it's a church, and so they have a pantry there. And so they were having issues with homeless folks and people coming around, but they also cater and provide meals for folks that are houseless or homeless. And so they are, folks are going there to get food, showers, clothing, and that type of situation. So they were asking us today, how do they build community? And so when we got there, we just sat down with them, and again, we are trying to really let people know that it's a compassion thing, to treat people with compassion, but at the same time, while building community, using compassion at the same time. So what we talked about there was, one, looking at murals, things that are holistic, that bring safety to the community. So a few things we suggested with this church, which is already doing a lot of things. They have a container in the back of the church, which has been broken into several times, and so we're going to look at lighting around the container. How can you place the container in a place where there's eyes on the container, meaning people can see out, and so when you go into the container, because right now it's behind the church in a dark area. So bringing lighting to that situation, or moving the container where people are going and coming inside the church. Those are just some examples that we're going to give to her when we go there. We also suggested Saul doing a cleanup, trying to get together and bring volunteers together in your neighborhoods to do cleanups. Those are free. Saul will provide you with bags and pickup and things of that nature. And then we talked about our party on Portland, our pop parties, registering your party in June and hosting parties in the first week of August. We've brought that back, Shar, as well. And that used to be under National Night Out, but we changed it to Party on Portland.
Well, that's good to know. Cindy, you got that?
Oh,
Yeah, right there, Cindy, okay.
So that's Party on Portland. That might sound insignificant to have a party. They're actually fun, and there's lots of food.
Oh,
so
we've done that
we want to
right
have
out
food
here,
and jumpy houses and things of that nature for the children. But what we found when you host those parties, you bring the community together. You also want to invite the folks that are out there, houseless or whatever. You can even bring those folks in and feed them and let them be a part of the community as well. So Party on Portland is one thing, so bringing community together, that's one thing you can do. And these are just suggestions, these are not things you have to do, this is just advice. So we're looking at parties, hosting pop parties and bringing community together. And that really helps you get to know your neighbors. And that's what our program is really all about.
That's what I would love.
It's just getting to know each other. You might have some people that live in the neighborhood that are vulnerable, that live alone, that are aging, that a lot of women that are single women that live by themselves. And so by getting to know your neighborhood, it allows you to be able to help and support people, and that brings people together. Another suggestion that we brought up about, like I said, murals are one thing, graffiti cleanups are another. So anything that brings people together, volunteers to help, give back to the neighborhood or give back to their community is what we recommend, and that helps to build the safety. I know with the police, I know we took a lot of questions last night about, calling the police and slow responses and being on hold, and that's a whole nother conversation that we can have. But what we're trying to do is help people identify other ways to just make their communities safe without having to, call police on different activities that don't rise to the level of a 911 call, which is life,
Or property in immediate danger.
property in immediate danger,
Or crime in progress.
or crime in progress. And so that's kind of what Safe Blocks program is, and we've evolved over time, and we've evolved over the years, and we're still learning too about new ways and innovative ways to, community policing or police your community in ways that are holistic, inclusive, and equitable for the whole community. So that's kind of what we do. Are there any more questions?
Is graffiti on the rise? I mean, I'm starting to see a lot more. And, you try to read it, whether it's being, trying to read what group they're with or whatever. But I see a lot more graffiti just all around.
Well, I think during the pandemic, there was a lot of graffiti that probably got tagged.
No,
People were tagging it, and they probably
the last
didn't
couple of
get.
months, I've
Yeah.
seen more.
Yes, and we were working in partnership with our graffiti coordinator, but if you want to do a graffiti cleanup, we can get you in contact with that person. And they come out and provide free paint, and they'll even do a training with the volunteers on how to clean the graffiti.
So if I called you
Right?
and wanted you to come out and talk to my neighborhood, would you guys coordinate, send out flyers to the neighbors? How would you guys coordinate some kind of a?
Well, whoever takes the lead would call us, and we would talk with you about how to organize it. We always let the community organize it. So you would organize it, contact your neighbors, give us a date and a time and a place, and we show up. So for example, if you wanted to host a training and you wanted to use this specific location, you just say, Mary, Jacob, we want to host a meeting on this date and time, and get your neighbors here, and we're here. So it's that simple. But we always like for the community we want to hear your voice, and so we always let you guys do the organizing, pick the place and time and date where you're comfortable to hold the meeting, and we'll show up and be there, bring the appropriate materials. You might want, something on SEPTED or something about, we don't have a whole lot of brochures, but we're really working on building more. But we do have our new 311 brochures with the right information of who to call and how to contact people. And last night we did a training on how to just report who to call. And it was interesting. Jacob did a wonderful job presenting all that information, but it is very, very difficult now on how to navigate the phone calls. Like for Portland Street Response, 911, we can do a training on that and really talk about it. And I'm in the process of gathering more information from Portland Street Response, because now it's citywide, and the call load now is just doubled, and that's a good thing because they're responding.
How long is your meeting? How long is the meeting?
It could be as long as you want it to be. It could be, normally we just say an hour and a half. So it'll take us about an hour to present the information, and then 15 to 30 minutes just for question and answers. So, and I'll leave my business card.
Thank you.
Did you have a question? Oh, okay, I thought I saw you raise your hand.
Any more questions?
Just a statement. So I live across 105th, and we have 2 roads that end. I mean, one's a cul-de-sac and one just ends. And for years, when my kids were growing up, now they're in their 40s, but anyway, we would always have a barbecue at the end of this, the street, and at that time, we'd have everybody write their name, their address, and a contact, an email, and all that. And so it's just that if we see a car that we don't know, or a person or whatever, we can get a line going, talking with our neighbors. And it's worked for years. We've gotten to know all of our neighbors, and they've got to know our cars, and if there's something that isn't right. And it's really nice having a block party kind of
Yes.
thing, and getting to know your neighbors, because you never know when you need them.
Right.
Yeah, the Party on Portland parties that Mary talked about, which used to be called National Night Out in Portland,
Yeah.
but now we're doing Party on Portland. They involve free street closure permits.
Oh,
So for the 2-week period and the early part of August, the first 2 weeks of August, you can get a free street closure permit to host one of those parties.
yeah, we're closed in,
Right.
so.
Right, sure.
It's nice to do, though.
Yeah, and for folks that have a different situation, maybe you want to close your, I mean, we did that on our block last summer. We closed the street and it was great. We had
Yeah.
about 100 people show up and
Yeah,
it was really nice.
that's nice.
And we were able to host, like I said, after the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, the National Night Out parties were averaging about 120 to 130 parties a summer. And now we just hosted 75 parties just to get back into the swing of things. So folks were really excited about it. They got out, they organized, and there were a lot of pop parties. I went to about 7 of them. And so this year it's going to be even more, and it's going to be bigger. So I would encourage you guys to, register for that in June. Again, you'll get free street closures, and also when you register for the pop party, you're able to invite police, fire, medical, outreach workers, safe blocks coordinators,
They
etc.
do a great job here.
Yeah.
Pop, pop.
Yep,
Party on
pop.
Portland.
Pop with an exclamation.
Yeah.
Pop.
Mine is really slow today.
Yeah.
Pop, what she's talking about, pot party. I know there's a pot dispensary
Not
in
pot.
the corner.
Pop.
POP.
Party on Portland.
Party on Portland. So we came up with that name, so every year it's just pop. So yeah. So I will conclude my presentation and hand it over to Director Myers, and then that way you guys can see more. And if you have more questions, we'll be right here to answer them. So that way, I'll get over.
All right, everybody, good afternoon. My name is Mike Myers. I am the Community Safety Transition Director for the City of Portland, and I'll explain what that term
I was going to say, you've been in transition for a while.
Yeah, I have been. This is my 36th year at public safety. I spent 26 years in the city of Las Vegas, Nevada. I was the fire chief there in Las Vegas. Retired there, moved over to St. Louis to be a fire chief there. Before, if you remember, Dan Saltzman, was our commissioner, gave me a call one day and asked me to come up to Portland and be the fire chief here. So I made that move with Dan. I was your emergency manager for a couple of years during COVID and the wildfire season, and then transitioned April 1st of last year, to 2021 actually, to be your community safety transition director. This all started back when I was the fire chief in 2016. If you remember, Daniel Outlaw was the police chief at the time. Daniel and I both came from city manager forms of government, and we were not used to this commission form of government. And we explained this. We'd meet regularly with a gentleman by the name of Tom Reinhardt, who was the city administrative officer at the time, that there was a lot of missed opportunity here in Portland by the way we're fractured and siloed in our community safety, having fire separated from police, each of them on a different payroll system, time card system. They don't coordinate their activities. And I'll just give you some examples of how that's been impactful and why we're in the situation we're in today. I draw the conclusion back to the fact that we have not been coordinating public safety efforts. You don't see this in other cities. So during those conversations, Danielle had moved on to Philadelphia, and Tom and I stayed back. And one of the conversations were that, look, there's going to be a change. We think there's going to be a change in the form of government. that it's likely that the charter change will make it as a referendum on the voters' ballot, and if it does, it might pass. So Tom Reinhardt asked me to start convening all of the public safety chiefs, Chief Lavelle, Chief Boone, Bob Causey with the 911 Center, and Shad Ahmed, who wasn't there at the time, but is now as the director of PBEM, the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management. So the 4 chiefs and myself started convening, just talking about how we can start possibly coordinating our activities better. There was a lot of redundancy, a lot of waste. We just need to clean this up. And so we started doing that work. Tom just basically said, act as if we are going to build a city manager form of government, and public safety will be under a deputy city manager someday. Well, the referendum did pass, and so we will be under a city manager form of government here within probably a year and a half, as we make the transition. So in February of 2021, the city council met and decided they wanted to have a community safety director, an individual that would do this work, and they laid out a work plan for that individual. They did their position posting process and their interviews, and I was hired on April 1st of 2021. The work plan, what they told me, my job was, it was just me, a single person as a paid employee in charge of this new division that the city is going to make. And the work plan was 4 things. 1, consolidate all of the public safety, fire, police, 911, and Portland Bureau of Emergency Management, all of what I call back of house. Payroll, time carding, finance, budgeting, strategic planning, data, public communications offices, everything under one. We'll leave the operations alone for right now. The chiefs still report to their bureau directors, but my job was to start consolidating all that. That was objective number 1. We are 90% complete with that consolidation. So we're managing about $650 million worth of your taxpayer dollar, budgeting and financing police bureau, hiring police officers, buying police cars, same thing with fire, 911, and PBEM, Portland Bureau of Emergency Management. So we're managing all that. That's one box. The other box, my responsibility is what's called right responder to the right call. When I arrived in Portland, and I met with the fire chief, the battalion chiefs, and my administrative staff, and I was looking at the layout of the fire station, where they were at. One of the issues that came up was there was no 311. There was no non-emergency line for the city of Portland. 311 has been around for decades. I had 311 operating in Las Vegas 20 years ago when I ran their alarm office back there. We were way behind. Portland for the years has advertised call 911 for everything. So what do people do? Call 911 for everything. And what it's led to today is the 911 system is so overwhelmed with people calling 911 for everything that your call wait times when you call for just about anything, right now, an average of 45 seconds, waiting for someone to answer the call. I've never seen anything like that in the United States of America in any city in this country. When I've run alarm offices in other major cities, when you call 911, it drops right in the ear of a call taker. You dial 911, and they say, police, fire, medical, how can I help you? There's no dial tone, there's no ringing. You don't wait. They answer it like that. And that's the goal. That's where we have to be. It's been my direction to Bob Causey and where we're going to be. We just need to get there. Here's the problem. Because, I'll just take fire, for instance, and I'll talk about police in a minute. From a fire standpoint, when there's what was an emergency to fire, we have a fire in a building, I have a person that's been shot, I have a person in cardiac arrest, a person with a stroke. That's when you send the fire trucks and all the paramedics, right? That's what we all agree, that's what we should send them, and send them quickly. We want them in 5 minutes or less, right? Keep the fire to the room of origin. I want people walking out of the hospital neurologically intact after a cardiac arrest because we got there quickly. That's our goal. What I don't need is if a softball game, somebody slides into the second base and breaks their ankle, I don't need a fire truck. I have a private ambulance company on contract that can take that call. Don't send the firefighters. And so we are evaluating all of that workload for Portland Fire, and it's going to come out, in the end, I already know, I've seen it all myself, but I have to hire an outside company to make it so, that they're going to say, look, 50% of these calls require a fire truck, 50% don't. They require something else. When I look at policing, they put an armed officer on everything, all calls, and they're so overwhelmed they can't get to everything. You read it in the paper all the time. I had a meeting with all their communications people today. Can't get to street racing, can't get to the auto theft, can't get to these things because we don't have enough resources. That is factual. They do need staff, and we are staffing up at the most rapid rate we can right now. But they also have an overwhelming workload that needs to be managed. We don't need armed officers on everything. I need an armed officer when there's a bank heist. I need an armed officer when there's a gun at you. But I don't need armed officers on about 40% to 50% of the work. I need different providers. So my job is to figure out the right responder to the right call. The third thing is, if I'm telling them you don't need a fire truck on these calls, you need some other responder, or you don't need an armed officer on these calls, you need some other responder, my third job is build out those other responders. So you're going to hear things like Portland Street Response, 311, and PS3s, which are the unarmed officer program for the city of Portland. Those are just the three, and I'm trying to enhance the private contract they have with American Medical Response, which is a private contractor that provides ambulance service in Portland. So that third box of really developing alternative responses we've been working on for a number of years. It's just my job to continue to make them better, enhance them better, get them really aligned, doing the work and taking this load off of police and fire. That's the third thing. Fourth thing, which was where Mary and Jacob come in, and is I think the most critical part of our work, is what we call upstreaming investment. And I'm going to talk about upstreaming investment in some examples when I talk about reducing gun violence here in Portland, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So since then, a couple things have been added on my plate. You'll also know about the Police Accountability Commission. November of 2019 or in 2020, I think, you passed a referendum to move the Police Accountability Commission. You moved the Independent Police Review out of the Auditor's Office, and if you remember, to have a Police Accountability Commission made up of residents that would review some police discipline. We manage that commission. The Portland Community on Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, that group we manage. The Community Oversight Group over the Focus and Intervention Team, I'll talk about that, we manage that group, and the Citizens Review Committee. All, by the way, the reason I always announce that is lots of opportunity to sit on these big committees in the city of Portland if you're ever interested. It's a good way to get inside on what's going on some of these issues that we have that we're dealing with. Fast forward to June of last year, as the summer was approaching, when we look at, we'll kind of go over this here real quick to show you. First of all, this is the website for Safer Summer PDX. A lot of data on here. If you ever are interested in looking, you can scroll down to this data point right here. You click on that, and you can get all kinds of information from the police bureau's shooting statistics to their district attorneys' gun violence page. I'm going to talk about this small area cluster map here, and I'm also going to talk about these reports, these homicide problem analyses that I use all the time. So let's go here first. As soon as I got the job, I asked this company, California Partnership, to do a homicide analysis for the city of Portland, so I really understand the homicide problem in Portland and could then use that to build plans to reduce gun violence. If you look at 2002 all the way over here to 2018, Portland had a very, very, very low rate of gun violence. It's some of the lowest gun violence I've ever seen in my life. I would argue then, I was not here at the time, but I would argue your gun violence rate from 2002 to 2018 is probably some of the lowest in the country. And I don't even know what the per capita rate is. Per capita would be the number of gun violence fatalities per 100,000 people. It would be very low. Something happened in 2018. Between 2018 and 2019, we went from 26 to 36. And then from 36 to 57, and from 57 to 88 murders. This growth curve right here, this sudden acceleration, is a 207% growth curve. It was the fastest growing gun violence in America. It was right here in the city of Portland. But even though it was the fastest growing gun violence that we've seen in the United States, does not mean that we were the highest gun violence fatality area in America. We were not. When we look at cities, I use comparison cities. This is common. You will see these comparison cities used like during negotiations with unions. I have to look at other cities that are comparisons. There's a formula that's used. These are common comparisons for us. Atlanta, Denver, Minneapolis, and Nashville. And I would argue today, I've said this to multiple people in the media over the past 3 or 4 days, that if you went home and Googled homicide rates in cities in America, highest homicide rates in America, most dangerous cities in America, top 25, I would argue top 50, Portland, or top 25, Portland does not come up. And I have looked at it even in top 50 cities, and Portland has not come up. So even when I looked at the gun violence after the 207% rate, we were at a per capita rate of 13.5 per 100,000. We were right in the middle of cities. Some people would say that's a normal homicide rate. But when I talk to the media, I said, there's no way. I'm going to tell the city, the people, the residents of Portland, that we have a normal homicide rate. They don't care that homicide rate sits there. They want it back to the way it was before.
Yes.
Because this does not feel safe. That felt safe. Right?
Yes.
And so we are not resting on the norm of 13.5. It's higher now, 14.5, I think, per capita. We can't. We have to find a way to get the gun violence back down and flatten that curve of 207% growth rate. So when the summer came of 2022, the Portland Public School District, the mayor's office called me and said, "Look, we are panicked here. We are going to have a bloody summer. All indications suggest that we are going to have a sudden uptick in murder over the summer. We have to do something." So I worked with Stephanie Howard, who's like my colleague in the mayor's office. She's also the community safety director directly for the mayor. Her and I work close together almost every day. We wrote a product called the Safer Summer PDX. Safer Summer PDX is a multifaceted plan to reduce gun violence. Primarily, the first thing is don't have a bloody summer. We have to make sure we don't have this sudden uptick in homicide and gun violence over the summer. And number two, start flattening the curve of the 207% growth in gun violence and start driving it down. I am happy to say, and I'll explain the plan to you, that we did not have an explosive growth in gun violence over the summer. And although we broke the record from last year, it is not on the scale of the 207% rate. We have already bent the curve. I now, in 2023, have to drive it down, and I'll explain to you how we're going to do that. This does not mean that every homicide in summer was tragic. Every one of them. Every one of these things, I get a text, I follow every one of them. It is heartbreaking. Every one of these murders that happen, and the stories behind the relationships in these homicides. But I am happy that we are starting to flatten the curve and move in the right direction. So, how do we do it? This is how we do it. Starting in February, starting earlier, the early part of 2021, we rolled out what was called the Enhanced Community Safety Team. This was a initiative by the mayor. Basically, it is the investigators that investigate shooters, locate shooters, apprehend shooters, and build packages to prosecute shooters. The second thing we did is built out the Focused Intervention Team. Focused Intervention Team, if you remember, they took the Gang Violence Reduction Team out of service a few years ago, and then we morphed it into what's called the Focused Intervention Team. And this is important to know. And I'm not, I don't know how many of you study criminology or the history in Portland, but I'm very clear with the media, and I want to be very clear with all of you. When we talk about putting policing options out into the community to reduce policing, or reduce gun violence, we are not talking about saturating neighborhoods with patrol cars, pulling people over and stop and frisk, or hiring a bunch of snitches. That's not what we're doing here in the city of Portland. We are using what's called a focused deterrence model. Focused deterrence. It works like this. A shooting occurs. We know who the shooter is. That's not hard to find out. Everybody knows everybody. We know who the shooter is. Go locate the shooter, identify that individual, and we do that through what's called a shooting review. We talk about what the shooter is, what jurisdiction is going to get this person, And what team is going to be put together to go get this individual? Is it a combination of police, FBI, the DEA, and who is it? Like what we're going to do? And they build that idea, that plan, and they go get the shooter. The second thing is they have what's called known associates. These are individuals who always seem to be in the car with the shooter. They always seem to be around the victim. They always seem to be around the perpetrator. Like, they're very close to this deal. So we go out and talk to them, or we want to go out and talk to them. We use what's just direct communication. We go out there and say, look, you always seem to be in the car. You always seem to be around these things. We want to make sure we're telling you right now, don't do it. Don't go pull the trigger. Whatever you're doing, you're getting too close to this. Some of them will say, look, man, you don't understand. I've got to carry a weapon. This is my life. I've got to do this because I don't have anything else. Okay, well, what will it take? What do you need? And if they tell us something they need, we have money and I have ways to help support them. I can get them out of this situation. Third thing is if they just ignore us, we'll send out the enforcement to go talk to them in a different way. Maybe we've got to. That's focused deterrence. It stops officers from having just to patrol through neighborhoods hoping to pick something up. Instead, we do this focused operation, and it helps the patrol officers focus their work. This is what we're going to roll out in 2023, is really, we're only doing a lot of it. I want to tie up any loose ends and make sure we're really doing it well. If you've noticed last year, we did not have a lot of arrests. Like, I would see these shootings happen, and I'm like, where's the clearance rate? Why are we not arresting these people? We know who they are. It just wasn't happening last year. And, spent the whole 6 months trying to figure out why we could not close these cases. The first couple of weeks, what are we, the 12th, 13th, what is it, 12th, 13th?
12 today.
12?
12.
Yeah, have you been watching the paper? We've been a lot of arrests happening in the first 2 weeks of January. I'm going to knock on some wood. How's this? We haven't had a homicide in 3 weeks. That's a record. Haven't had a homicide in 3 weeks. That doesn't mean tonight we're not going to have 3, because I said it. But we're turning the corner, and I told the media the other day, and Matt Gasway from KATU said, one public official thinks we're optimistic about the future. I am optimistic. I don't want to, would you prefer me to be negative? I am optimistic we're going to turn the corner. We will get this done. But you can't police your way out of it. It doesn't work that way. There are 3 other things we're doing in combination with the policing activity of the Focused Intervention Team and the investigators. Second thing we're doing is the Office of Violence Prevention does 4 things. We spend millions and millions and millions of taxpayer dollars every year to fund community programs to keep youth out of getting in trouble. And we do that through 4 nonprofit organizations. POIC, Latino Network, IRCO, and NEA. We've been funding them for 17 years. This is common. Every city up there has an Office of Violence Prevention and funds long-term crime prevention to keep youth out of trouble. That's normal. It's a lot of money, but you have to do it. If you don't keep the youth out of trouble, just ignore it, they'll get into trouble. Second thing we do is what's called healing hurt people. When there is a shooting and that person's taken to the trauma center, we send individuals to the trauma center to meet with the victim and the family for a number of reasons. Sometimes there's victim and other people around there, cousins, kids, brothers, sons, and we're like, these kids need to get out. We need to get them out of the state or out of the city someplace till things cool down. And we tell them right there, please do not go and retaliate for this murder. Don't pull the trigger again. Stop. We want to break the cycle of harm right now. And sometimes help them with wraparound services. So we'll be at the funerals, we'll be at the memorials with these kids. The third thing that we do, and this is broken, is we help people that are getting out of parole, off of parole and probation, assimilate back into society so that they're not picking up the gun again. Of the 100% of the gun violence problem, of the murder rate in Portland, 50% of the gun violence is 18 to 25, 30-year-old young black and brown men that are killing each other, right? And of that, 70% of the individuals were previously incarcerated or have been on probation and parole. The whole idea, and I hire many individuals that have murdered before, that have been in incarceration, come out of probation and parole. These are wonderful men that say, look, man, I've been there. I was a gang member. I murdered people. I want to help and talk to these kids and tell them, don't do this. And we sat there at a celebration with dozens of these men the other night, had broke bread with them. These are beautiful, they're amazing people. And they're hard to hire. You got to find them, but they're there. And I pay them a lot of money to go out there, hire them, to go out there and talk to these kids and tell them, don't do this. Don't do this. And, but the problem is that it's not working right now. They're coming out of probation and parole. People are picking up guns again because they don't have, something's wrong. So I'm working with the county and the city to help fix that problem. That's a key. It's key. The last thing is critical. It's called street level outreach work. You'll hear it SLO, street level outreach work. These are credible messengers. I have a company, an organization called Cure Violence. They vet people to make sure that these people that are telling me, hey, pay me and I can go talk these people out of shooting. Well, I don't know who these people are. But Cure Violence does. This organization helps me vet individuals to make sure that if I'm giving these individuals contracted money, that they are the ones that actually do have the relationships with these kids and can go in there and talk to them and talk them out of shooting. And just have conversations with these kids and get them down a different path. So that's also part of what we're doing to reduce gun violence. We put a lot of money into that over the summer, $2.7 million into just street level outreach alone over the summer. That's one of the reasons I think we're seeing the fruits of that right now. Third thing. Third thing is where Mary comes in, and Jacob. Third thing is investments. Remember I told you my fourth box was upstream investments? Remember I told you that? This is where this all works. This is a heat map. These big blobs are concentrations of killings, concentrations of gun violence. It's where murder is happening in large-scale concentrations.
Where's Lance?
You're over here. Are you out here somewhere?
Oh, there's,
There's Hazelwood, there's Monteville.
Yes, south of
where's Powell or?
We don't have any problems.
Here's Powell. So you're out here somewhere. You've got some. You're not the worst, but it might feel like it.
Obviously downtown looks a whole lot worse.
So downtown, in June of last year, when the mayor declared an emergency around gun violence in June. He declared an emergency around houselessness and an emergency around gun violence. He put an incident commander over each one of those emergencies. That incident commander is me for both the emergency declaration over houselessness and the emergency declaration over gun violence. We started bringing those programs together I've been talking about, that first box, the second box, and this investment box. We sat people down, showed them the heat map, and it is my belief, and I've always felt this way, that you cannot police your way out of crime. You must change the conditions in which people live, and they will self-regulate. If you can change the conditions, change the neighborhood for the better, you won't need to police it. I was living in Las Vegas. I was the fire chief there, and it's a big city. There's a couple million people there. A lot of crazy stuff goes on there. And I can remember telling them as the fire chief, look, we got to figure out on our strategic plan how many fire deaths we want. We want to say, is 30 fire deaths a year okay? Because we got to do something about this. And so I'm not going to tell the community we'd like to keep fire deaths at 30. I'm going to tell the community we want to have 0 fire deaths. Chief, you can't do that. You can't tell them 0. These have got to be realistic, achievable goals. 0 fire deaths in one of the top, busiest cities in the world? No, you can't do that. I can do that because we hired a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Jay out of Boston University. At the time I hired him, he was a graduate at Harvard's School of Public Health. He did predictive modeling. Jonathan could predict almost down to the house based on previous data of where fires were going to occur. And we would go to those neighborhoods and look at the neighborhoods and start removing the things that we thought would cause fire. Educating people, removing poverty, all kinds of different things that would happen in these small areas of neighborhood, just change the dynamics in that area. The last day, last year before I retired, it was coming into November, we were at 0 fire deaths. This is like 2014, 0 fire deaths moving into November. And then 3 people died the last 2 months I was there. Older woman in her 90s, power went out, lit a candle, had her nightgown on, caught her on fire, killed her. 2, a man and a son working on a boat motor, using some kind of spray to get it started, lit it, killed him. And, but my first year in Portland, when I got here, Tim Zimanski was our PIO. If you hear that name, he was the communications person for the Salt Lake Olympics. We had him as a communications person for our fire department there. Called me and said, hey, just want you to know, we got to 0 fire deaths. No fire deaths in the city of Las Vegas. I can tell you it can be done, not just in fire deaths, but also in crime. And here's how it works. We sat in the incident command meeting. Captain Crooker's our precinct commander. Now, Captain Crooker, I'm looking at a heat map right now that shows the downtown entertainment district, and the downtown is the highest homicide rate in the city of Portland. Now, why is that? Well, he tells me, I tell you, I think I can get it down. It's happening only on certain days of the week, in certain times, early morning, 1 to 3 in the morning. And I think if you let me put an entertainment detail together, of police officers to work those hours, I think we can do something. You got it. So what do? We meet with in this case, it was meet with all the business owners, because there's nobody living right in there in that little area, very few people, most of it's business owners. And when we're meeting with managers, bartenders, bouncers, we put an entertainment detail of officers down there, a host of street-level outreach workers that went bar to bar talking to potential gang members down there that are partying or doing whatever they're doing. We lit up parking lots that were dark, where murders were occurring. We stopped traffic down there and just made it pedestrian only. We did that in September of last year. Look at all the murders we had there. How many murders do you think we've had since we did this plan for downtown entertainment district? September. 0. Out of 82nd in Milton, we picked another one. I think this is 82nd in Milton, if I can see it right. How this happened is the Oregonian published an article said, here's the most dangerous intersection in Portland. So we went out there, and in this one, it was a community thing. It was community driven. We met with the community. We said, hey, you've got a gun problem out here. You've got a gun violence problem out here. What do you see as the problem? It's all right there. It's on Milton Avenue, an entrenched houseless encampment, and a motel across the street where they're doing prostitution and drugs. And so we brought a bunch of bureaus together. First of all, we had a major bust on that for the people that were involved doing the guns and the drugs. We pulled a ton of guns out of there, a lot of cash, and a lot of fentanyl out of there. Posted the place no parking. We kept removing the encampment over and over and over until we stood our ground and they weren't able to put anything back on that street. We worked with the hotel owner in multiple different ways, and today he's repainted it, re-landscaped it, cleaned up his parking lot, which had those things in it, boxes and all kinds of things, and rerouted some of his stuff so he didn't have people rolling through there doing drugs, and worked on his management skills on running his, I think we did a lot of work out of these two and their team out there working on assessments with him, building this relationship, and ultimately it really, thank you both, really paid off out there, so just amazing work. And they ran a follow-up article from the neighborhoods if you want to see what the neighbors had to say. How many murders do you think we've had since we did finish that project? 0. And when we don't walk away, right? So when we're done with that, when we were done with 82nd and Milton, we leave back a monitor, someone to oversee it. That's where Mary Thompkins and Jacob's team comes in. They leave a person back to keep an eye on this. They continue to meet with the neighbors. I go out there once in a while to meet with the neighbors, making sure that it doesn't creep back, because the minute you turn your back on this stuff, it'll crawl right back in, right? So we believe it can work. So if you can imagine taking these things off the map, there's only 12 of them. What if I did all 12? What if we did all 12 together, right? What if we went into every one of these neighborhoods and met with them, and each one of them is different, has a different issue, and we're able to design a plan for them to take this off the map, to reduce their gun violence? Would that not reduce a tremendous amount of gun violence in Portland? And so that's the goal, and I know we can do this together. And the reason why it's important for police is if you build a really safe environment in these there, you don't need to have police there. You'll do it yourself. It's safe, right? You don't need them that much. You want somebody rolling through once in a while. You want to be able to call them, maybe see them once in a while, but you don't need them in there so often, right? So that's the investment part. And this is the way I'm talking with the police chief about, this is community policing. This is what community policing is. It's the community driving it and bringing everybody together, and us bringing everything together, and we work with the community to design a safety plan for their neighborhood that can work. This year we're going to do Hazelwood. It's very big. I've got a couple $1 million to put in there. Close to a couple $1 million to put in the actual Hazelwood area. There's like multiple micro locations in Hazelwood that need to be worked on. It's very complex. It's likely will be out in the Elliott neighborhood as well. They're having a lot of problems around Dawson Park and the hospital out there. I had a meeting with the hospital administration this morning, and they're desperate for help. It's our only trauma center here in Portland, and they're having problems out there. And I know one of your questions are, when are we going to get to Lance?
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. I can see it in your face. and we will. Okay, and I promise you that we are not going to stop. So this is a forever operation, right? It's not like, hey, we'll be done on Thursday. This is an forever operation. You don't ever stop this work, because when you do stop the work, it just comes back, right? It just comes back. The fourth box is, of 100% of your gun violence problem, I said 50% of it was young black men that are killing each other, right? And we talked about how we might help that group make different decisions. 40% of the gun violence problem is actually in the houseless groups. These are entrenched encampments. They are often connected. The ones that are involved in this, not all, ones that are involved in this are often involved in gun trafficking, sex trafficking, drug trafficking, auto theft, organized retail crime. You get involved in those things, at some point somebody's pulling a gun and is going to get shot. And 40% of our gun violence is in houses. So I also said that back in June, a little bit earlier.
You said 40%?
40%.
In house?
Now it's arguable. The last report I had said 28, but when I called and talked to the analyst that did the work, she told me that it was 40 in the prior assessment. It's not 40 now because she didn't have all the data, but she firmly felt that it probably was. But I can't confirm that the current report only says 28, but I'm confident that it's higher. So the mayor also declared an emergency around houselessness, and he talked about, safe streets to school, high-speed corridors, but also part of the, I'm the incident commander over this as well. Also part of this is anything attached to crime, we've got to root out and find where it's at and start moving them. So and somebody talked about compassion with houselessness. Here's how we do this. We always, and you'll read in the paper that they're doing sweeps and nobody said anything to me and they stole my stuff, and that is not the way we're doing business. I don't know why that keeps coming up. We are by law required to post 72 hours beforehand. We have, I have dozens of navigators out there. I have shelter space available. I offer the shelter space to everyone. 10% take it, 90 do not. They don't want it. They don't, for whatever the reason is, they won't do it. So 10% do, and then we are not allowed to throw their stuff away. We must house it, and house it for a period of time. So I actually have warehouses where I house people's stuff, and then they can get it back if they go to shelter. And so that's part of the way how we do this. So from a houselessness standpoint, houselessness to me, because I'm responsible for it in the city now, over the past 6 months, I've been trying to work on getting it better and better. We still, the houselessness issue is this. The way I see it, and each one of you may have a different definition on it, and that's perfectly fine. I just have to have my own brain about how I'm seeing it, so I can do something about it. There are people that are living in homes today that if they don't have assistance, they will be houseless. And so we're talking about rent assistance, utility assistance, mortgage assistance, a lot of assistance out there to help keep people in their homes. And I think we do a fairly good job of that, of making sure those things are available from the state level, from the county level, and from the city level. That's one approach. Second is people that are on the verge of I'm getting evicted and I will be houseless in about this week. We have eviction protection, free attorneys, things that we can do to keep people in their home. The third thing is if tonight I'm out, tonight I need a place to stay. We have 2,400 beds out there that are not always full every night. If I have a dog, I need this type of bed. If I'm a transgender, I need this type of bed. If I'm a domestic violence person affected by domestic violence, I need this type of bed. If I'm a single woman, I need this type of shelter. A shelter for each different type, we have that. If you have children, we have that. So those are available. The issue in Portland is the fourth group. And it's where we get an F. And the fourth group are about 6,000 people out there that are on the street that the majority, many, I would say, I don't want to say majority because I could substantiate that. I just think I know because I live downtown and walk to work every day and walk home every day and I see what I see, is that there's a heavy influence of drugs within the houseless community within Portland. And so much so that these individuals, you gave them a house tomorrow, they would be unable to make a bed, make a meal, turn on a light, turn off a light, lock a door, make a phone call. They can barely communicate at all. And they're not suited for any shelter. There'd be disruptive in a shelter. So they live on the street. If I were your emergency manager, and I was, and if we had a hurricane, a flood, or an earthquake, and it immediately displaced 5,000 people, you would say, Mike, I want these 5,000 people that were in a house yesterday, but because of the earthquake they're not today, cannot live on the street, Mike. Do something. I would build a campus, put 5,000 tents up. I would bring all the services there to bear so you could immediately meet every day your client services person and navigate you back into housing. But know this, that even in almost every instance that has occurred, and when we've had major hurricanes and floods and earthquakes here in America, when people are put in that situation, it takes 3 to 5 to 7 years to navigate from that disaster back into housing. And those are people that were on a good footing before they lost their home, right? On a good footing before they lost their home. So imagine, I'm talking about people that aren't. And so it takes about, I lived in Las Vegas, right? If you've ever been to Las Vegas, you can build housing from Las Vegas all the way to Phoenix, affordable housing. I mean, there's miles of potential to build housing, nothing but desert. In Portland, we're in an urban growth boundary. You do know that, right? We have an urban growth boundary. You cannot build all the way to Eugene. It doesn't work that way. You stay within your urban growth boundary. Your only option to build new affordable housing is infill and up. Yeah. There's a lag time for housing. 6 to 7 years for affordable housing to be built. So is the answer then, well, hey, live on the street for 6 years and eventually we'll get you into housing? No. And I don't know about all of you. You may have more, integrity or willpower than I do. But if I were left for 6 years on the street, at some point, I would imagine I'm drug addicted. I'm involved in crime. I imagine. How could you not be? And so we have to do something. So you probably read about the campuses. Like, we're going to provide safe spaces for people to camp, sanctioned camping. Bring the services to the campus. Allow them to put their tent there. We'll provide a tent. They'll get a tent there. We'll do something there. My job is to build 3 of these campuses and then ultimately 6. But we can't allow them to continue to sleep on the streets of Portland. Not in a tent, not in a car, not in an RV. It's not safe. It's not right. And they're preyed upon. They are preyed upon. And then they become pawns to do all of the petty crime that you're probably here to talk about. So that is the evolution, the journey that I'm on with you. All right? That's the plan. I mean, that's where we're headed as a city. And so you have heard everything that I have written down or that we've done in the Incident Command Center. This is the intent to right-size this ship. And we've been working on it over the last 6 months.
And where's these campuses going to be?
I don't know yet. So I'm looking at one right now. So I don't know yet. I'd be too early to tell. And here's the reason why.
Don't tell us.
I can't tell you yet.
Don't tell us.
I have to meet with the community before I just blurt it out. And they will pump me with pitchforks. But I'll tell you this. I know one thing. We must have, this is important for you to understand. First of all, there will always be houselessness in Portland. There are houseless in every city, almost around the world. Not every city in the world. Some countries handle things differently. But we will always have it here in Portland. The objective here is to provide safe, sanctioned camping, and then not to allow it to spill out and around the campsite, around the campuses. And we've seen numerous times that that's happened. You offer a service and everything grows up around it. We have to have a good neighbor agreement with our neighbors if we're going to do that, or no neighborhood is going to want it. right? So we have to figure that part out. But we will have to figure out where we can do this. And it is going to be very controversial. People are going to be upset, but my job is to keep it to where it's okay. It doesn't creep out. I'm also responsible for trash and graffiti now, as of a couple days ago. So I'll be we're kind of looking at geographic areas that are also impacted with, because all this kind of comes together together. That's why we're putting it in one house. Okay, answer your question. Sorry, I couldn't answer it the way you wanted it.
Mike, how long are you going to be employed in Portland? Yeah.
How long?
Yeah.
Why are you getting ready
What kind of
to let
commitment
me
can we
go?
get from you, huh?
You getting ready to let me go?
No, keep you on. How do we get a commitment for 5 years from you? Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people over here that are doing the hard work. Mary's been at this for 17 years. Jacob? 12. 12. I mean, this is not new. What Mary mentioned it. The key here is, I grew up under the incident command system, fighting fire in a big city. And so the fires that we had in Vegas were not house fires. These were major campaigns in hotels that went on for hours and hours with a tremendous amount of loss of life. And you have to, and that's why I'm structured, my mind is around the incident command system. And the only reason I tell you that is, I believe that's what was missing here, was bringing everything together as a campaign to fix the problem. We were just everybody doing their own isolated thing, which was good work. It needs to be brought together as a campaign. Yeah.
So how long are you going to be here? You didn't answer my question.
As long as you keep me. I bought a place here. I live here in Portland, so my intent is, I love this city. It's a great city. I mean, it's got its problems, but it's beautiful.
Well, Mike, what do you attribute? We've had a history of well below average murder.
Oh, but what?
We've had a history in Portland of well below average murder rates.
Yes.
Why do you think that was for so long?
I don't know. I don't know. I think this is I don't know why you all had such a tremendous, low-level murder rate. Things have changed in Portland, even since I've been here. I'm here for 7 years, and things have changed. I rented down in the Pearl, because that came from Vegas, so it was like the coolest thing I could find, right? So I lived down there, and all the bars and restaurants that I used to go to are all closed. And then we had, the year of riots and protests and civil disobedience, all the things. Those are some of that's good, and some of it was bad, and some of it was appropriate, and some of it wasn't. And that it changed the landscape of Portland. I don't know that we'll get back to those days. For those of you that are reflecting and thinking, I want to get back to the good old days. I don't know if we will. I don't know if we will ever get down to a low homicide rate again. Homicide is cyclic. It does come and go. We have had worse homicide times here in Portland. In the 80s and in the 90s, your per capita homicide rate was actually higher than it is now. So it is cyclic. It will go down. It will go down.
Is there anything you can point to from 2015 or as long as you've been here, when those stats went up? What do you attribute those to?
Well, there's a number of things. It's complex. I mean, some people would say that in cities that had a gang violence reduction unit out working and had a strong ceasefire plan out working, you would think, well, because they had, and we didn't, and our gun violence rate shot up 207%. But I'm going to tell you right now, even those cities that had those other things, all across America, the gun violence rate shot up those years. So some people, what's the common denominator? Pandemic. So well, how can a pandemic, a flu, a bad virus, I shouldn't say flu, because more than a flu, a bad virus, a respiratory virus, impact gun violence? That doesn't make sense. It's everything that's shut down around the virus. All your public defense, all your public defenders, all of the courts, the jails then started putting people out because you couldn't have both jail beds full, have one jail bed full for 6 feet of distance. Everything backed off, and on all of those small things that we were doing at the time to keep things going, all your probation and parole meetings weren't in person anymore, they were on virtual, and maybe one or two of those things would have been okay, but we backed off on everything. All across America, and there's some good to be had there, but there's a lot of it just got unwieldy, and people started to have time on their hands. I mean, the murders that we're seeing in the youth community, this isn't robbing for money. They're not breaking into your homes and murdering you. That's not what's happening. These are two young black men that are mad at each other, they've been disrespected, and they're not going to stand for that. And so they're going to go take care of business. that's how they're operating right now. And where we're asking them to please don't put the gun down. You know, fist fight's one thing, but pulling a gun and killing your buddy, killing your neighbor, your brother, that's not right. You know, that's got to stop. That's a large percentage of this gun violence problem. And the other part is our houseless community, which are preyed upon by predators that are running criminal organizations.
There was a couple of people that were shopping at Winco. I think that was last year or the year before. They knew each other. They were out shopping at Winco and they got angry and...
Yeah, it's just sad. None of these stories are happy stories.
So years ago, I don't know if it would still help, but when I worked at the school, it was nice just having a police officer come through
Yeah,
and have their presence.
yeah,
Even when I went to Marshall, and it was, I graduated in '70, but we had a narc officer in our
Yeah.
cafeteria.
yeah.
There was, you know, it's
Yeah.
just making a community that kids, you know, when they're, I mean, they see them when they come at their house, the police officer, and so they're not, you know, they just need to see him in a friendly manner.
Yeah, we have some work to do. This is also, I mean, we're not ignorant of the fact here of what happened at the George Floyd murder and the mistrust in police. And so that trust needs to be built back. When the community, and specifically the brown and black community, can trust their police department, then they will talk. They will communicate with them regularly. And they will tell them this is who did the shooting. That trust isn't there right now. You know, a lot of the kids didn't want those police officers in the school. The police officers were, some accusations around the country that there's a pipeline from school to incarceration, and you wanted to separate from that. I don't believe that was going on here in Portland. But we're working on that trust issue, building that back too. This is multidimensional. But we are working on that trust issue as well. I'll be at Portland Public Schools tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning to talk just about this and the opportunity to build those connections there. This is more about, you know, not policing in the general sense of having an armed officer, you know, walk in the halls watching people. This is more about building connections of like men talking to young boys. Really, this is a young boy problem on that side of the equation, and having conversations and building respect in that young man that would have pulled the trigger, having another option in life, a job, respected, feeling respected, so that they can feel like they're going to lead a normal life. A lot of these kids feel like nobody cares about them, they don't care anymore, and what do they got to lose? They know they're dying before they're 30. They don't care. They could care less. Well, that's got to change. They need to love, they need to be able to love themselves. And this, I know this may sound soft to all of you, but this is the real deal.
Yeah.
You've got to change these kids' attitudes where they feel like they're going to have something in life. Or
How do we do that, Mike?
just going to adult. We have these organizations that are trying to reach these kids and talk to them and then start. We've got people out there helping them get jobs in construction, and there are blue-collar jobs out there where you don't have to have a college education, but you can make good money. Good money. You know, back in the day, there was a lot of good opportunities, and when we were making cars and we were making things, and all kinds of people. Your families, my families were all blue-collar workers. There's good money.
We need workers.
Yeah,
We need
a lot of people. I need workers.
Yeah.
We all do. So these kids just need to have that opportunity and make a decision to put the gun down. I'm not pulling the trigger. The city is not pulling the trigger. These are individuals that are choosing to pull the trigger, and the conditions that I'm a 56-year-old white guy. I have no idea what these kids are living under, the stress that they're living under, the conditions in their family, the conditions in their home, the conditions in their neighborhood. But it isn't good.
Do you think a lot of them are single parent?
I don't know. There's all kinds of discussions about broken families, and for everybody, you know, if anybody's been through a divorce and didn't have a dad, you know, and a lot of us, I'm sure, have been in divorces, and we're about, you know, either you were a child of a divorced parent or you are divorced and, you know, your kids are, you know, you worry about them. So there's some discussion about that, but I don't know that I would be, you know, able to reflect on it or talk confidently about it. Let's go back here, then I'll come to you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I think the city makes everything too difficult. The mayor said it's going to take 18 months to get these camps going.
Yes.
That's bull.
Okay.
You call in the National Guard. Who better knows how to set up in an emergency?
Yeah.
You get fences around it so the neighbors feel safe, and also the houseless will feel safe. You bring in porta potties, you bring in the water, you bring in electricity. They will have some kind of counselors there on site. You also will not have your 40% because they will not be allowed to take weapons in there. How much easier could it be? 40% right there, done.
I understand. Did you have a comment?
Brian.
Brian, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Neola's done, yeah.
Yeah, she made a statement. She didn't ask me a question.
No, I didn't ask a question.
What is there a solution for property crime? Like, I work on 82nd Division, so.
Yeah, well, yes and no. I think, Mary, your teams can help with recommendations on what they can do. But I think, for me, two things. I really felt like, when I was having these early discussions in the incident command team last year, that that there is some kind of organized retail crime going on. This isn't just one-offs. It's petty, right? It's breaking and entering and stealing an iPad and some petty cash. These aren't big rip-offs. They're not stealing, Van Gogh art. They're taking iPads and just petty stuff and vandalizing. And it appears organized to me. Growing up in Las Vegas, I was around in the 80s. I watched the organized crime. I know it when I see it. And so this is the way it's described to me in policing. If you have an auto theft ring that people are stealing autos, you take out the top 2 or 3 auto theft crime rings and 90% of it will go away. So I believe it's that. I believe these are just not one-offs. This isn't your neighbor prowling around I don't think it's your neighbor, prowling around your place. I think this is more organized. And so we do need, as the police chief is hiring back officers, and we are hiring them back at a fastest rate we can. We're funding it, we're hiring them back. Adding back those details, somebody talked about a narcotics detail, traffic detail, hiring back an organized crime detail to work on auto theft, catalytic converter theft, organized retail crime, I think is the key. Yes.
When I grew up, I don't think that you could steal $900 a day in the city of Portland and not be prosecuted.
Yeah.
What impact do you think that has? What impact do you think the DOJ decree from 2014 has? What do you think the impact of Measure 110 has? And what do you think those...
So we could go on and on. $400 cash bail. We could go on and on. Public defender crisis of not having a public defender. So if you don't get a right to a speedy trial, you don't have a public defender, you just go free. If we sat up here and had a whiteboard and we listed, let's say 20 things. Could we come up? I think we'd come up with 20 things that are pretty impactful. Low bail rates, the Measure 110, allowing drug-free without having the treatment centers open first. it's a good idea, but we put the cart way before the horse here. We could go on and on. I would argue that if we did one of those things, I've been an ice climber, where it was my side gig, I was a paramedic and an ice climber. And I remember I had a climbing accident, and I can remember after the climbing accident talking to other people that have had near fatal accidents. I ended up talking to an airplane pilot at one time, and he told me, he says, when you're flying an airplane, I'm not a pilot, so I don't know if this is true or not, is what he told me. Pilots out there maybe disagree. He tells me you can make 1 error flying the plane, probably be okay, you recover. You can make 2, and it's scary, but you'll recover. You can't make the 3rd. And because I remember my climbing accident, I made 1 error. I forgot my flashlight. My headlight went out. I was climbing. You have to climb early in the morning when everything's frozen to climb ice. And I remember, being off route was my second thing, and my third one was trying to pick up a drop tool, and I fell. And so it resonated, these 3 things. I have no idea if this is true or not, but if you wrote 20 things up here, we might be able to recover from 1 of them. We might be okay if there were 2 of those things. But after your 3rd one, 4th one, 5th one, I can see why we're in this position today. And so, as you're seeing, I see light at the end of the tunnel. But I didn't tell you everything. The things you just talked about, those are on the to-do list. These are weak spots in the whole chain that has to get fixed. And some of them, they're out of my control specifically, but I still have to go bring the people together to at least talk about it and get it fixed. Which means I've hired a legislative person to go up to the legislature in the state, work on Measure 110 reform. Not abolish it, but work on reform. Get those we need public defenders. We cannot be just letting people go free. because they don't have a speedy trial. How are we doing on time, Sharon? I feel like I've been talking for 2 hours.
You're doing great.
7:52.
Is it close? 8 minutes left?
We're 8:30 actually,
Okay.
but we can stop whenever
I'm
you
losing my
want.
voice. All right. What else? Anything else? Any other questions? You can add, just teasing, so you can ask.
Okay, so what I want to know is, I generally agree with the idea of providing infrastructure for people who are living outside.
Yeah.
But what I can't imagine is what are the possibilities, how could that look to keep the communities around them safe? Because what I have seen and experienced is where there are larger camps, there is more what feels like danger to me.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. So here's how it will work. Oh boy. Okay. So these will be fairly large campuses. Not sure what that means. If that's 50 or 100, I don't think there'll be. Or 150. I don't think there'll be much. It fluctuates. My responsibility is to figure that out. It'll be dependent on the size of the campus. I am hiring a contractor that will be on site. This isn't one person, it's an entire group of people. They have the responsibility for 1,000 to 2,000 feet around the facility for security. There'll be treatment people on there every day because people might be using drugs in there. Their job is to keep it clean, keep it orderly, provide services. We have a whole team. If you can imagine a team at every campus working to make sure that that doesn't happen at each campus, it's not just a free-for-all, but just don't put your tent in there, nobody's there. It's a 24-hour supervised operation. Because in some places we'll have Wi-Fi, in bathrooms and showers, and there'll be wound care and dental opportunities, and I'm going to try to really do this. Look, and I'm hiring somebody. I'm going to post for a job for the actual person to run it all, because I can't do all these things. I'm going to hire somebody to help me run it. I'm actually going to try to hire somebody that has done this internationally. Having large-scale campuses where people are houseless on campuses seems to be a new thing in Portland. It is not a new thing around the world. It's done all over the world, has been done all over the world on a much, much bigger scale than what we're talking about, and done very successfully. All over the world. You know those things as refugee camps. And they're run by international aid foundations. Now, we won't have an international aid foundation here. I am using some international aid foundation ideas here, but I will be hiring someone that has done this in big campuses internationally that wants to come back and do it domestically and to run it right here in Portland. Because if you think about a campus, I can't just have squalor. I can't have outbreaks of cholera. I can't have food poisoning. I can't have people preying on each other in here. Yeah. The instant that happens, we're liable for that stuff. Right? As a city, you will be liable, right? You're the taxpayer. I got to do this right. So I want to keep us all safe from liability also, and it's the right thing to do. But if you think about it in that respect, I'm going to try to run it well and with somebody that's done this kind of work.
Have you guys figured out any areas yet?
We have a couple of ideas, but I cannot willing to talk about it yet.
Okay.
Because that's a whole communication campaign with the neighborhoods that will be close by. And if I say something that I'm not prepared to handle the fallout.
Mike, if they're not clean, safe, and stable, they won't be successful.
They won't. The neighborhoods won't want them there.
Well, yeah, and then the people won't want to go there.
That's right.
So they've got to be successful, clean, safe, and stable.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you 100%. I have to be able to sleep at night knowing I can tell somebody you can't sleep here. You can sleep there, but you can't sleep here. And if I'm going to tell them there, then I better be able to say it's a safer spot for you.
Some years back, the mayor came up with funds, I think it was like $30,000, and anybody who wanted to get back to where they came from, they got a travel voucher. Mm-hmm. Will the city be doing something like that?
I don't think so. I haven't heard that before. We did something like that in Las Vegas. I didn't even know if it was legal back in the day, but I'm not sure. I haven't heard that. I can ask to allow people to relocate. I don't know.
I thought that went to the police department.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with it.
Okay.
I have heard of that before. In Las Vegas, we did that. Again, I don't know if it was even legal back in the 80s, but I don't know for sure. It's a good call. I'll find out.
How are you going to get the people into the encampments? I don't think they want to go there.
Yeah, so we have two things. One, as soon as the sanctioned camping is open, we want to get to the point where we have enough open where we can tell people you can't camp here. The law is that you can't tell people they can't camp if there's no bed available for them to go to. I believe I'll have the beds available for them to go to. That way I can tell people you can't camp here. And in that case, we will have transportation. I have a grant. I have enough money. I also have Portland Street Response to help transport people that, yes, I want to go. Good. We have a transportation unit to take you there. And so that's that. Somebody could say, I'm not leaving. And that is an issue. Like, what are we going to do, arrest them?
Yeah,
We're not going to put people in jail for that. I just don't think that's going to happen. People are doing a lot worse things and not going to jail for it. So that, I think, I think where you're headed, that is a conundrum. I'm not sure. Now, we are out there, we are relocating more homeless people today on the streets of Portland than we ever have in the history of Portland. I have a command center that runs all day long in City Hall that I sit right there with the person. That's the guy that I hired to do it, Nate Takara, and they're moving people all day long. Never once have I had someone, because the people that I send out there are pretty special people. I got a couple firefighters that I hired that used to do work. It's a long story, but they're just fantastic people. I send them out there to stubborn people, and they have a way of like sharing a cigarette with these people, and pretty soon they're like, all right, I'll move. And I don't know how they do it. It's just, they're special. But I do see a day when the people are just like, no, I'm not moving. And then I don't have an answer yet.
What about mental illness?
It's more behavioral illness. There's an underlying mental health illness crisis, a mental crisis within the homeless population, but it's more about behavioral. It's really drugs that's causing this. When you see somebody screaming at a light pole, or see somebody having an episode on the street corner, that's the behavioral health issue. I think there are two things. One, I've never been in a city that doesn't have like a sobering center. You used to be able, in every city I've been to, an individual was, they were having this crisis in the street, you'd sign a form, we would take them down to the sobering center, the detox center, and they'd stay there for 72 hours against their own will. That's what we did. I did it all the time as a paramedic. And it was healthy for them to get them off the street, get them out of that condition. We don't have that in Portland. We don't have a detox center. We don't have a sobering center.
Wasn't Hooper or whatever?
Yeah, Hooper's closed down in 2018.
We used to over
In Southeast.
anytime.
Yeah. We used to have one.
I know we did, yeah. So part of my job is to open new ones. And so I've got, handfuls of them, 16 or 18 beds are opening up shortly. I need many more than that. And so, but back in the day when I was on the street, you could take somebody for 72-hour hold, and in 72 hours they're clean and they walk out and function. Then the drugs got heavier and heavier and heavier. And my understanding today is what these people are using today is going to take a lot more than 72 hours for you to detox. And I'm afraid we've crossed a little bit of a Rubicon there. I'm not sure what to do about that. But we do need in Portland sustainable detox centers that people can go to. There is a behavioral health resource center now in downtown. It's run by the county. I'm having problems there trying to work on. That's a county issue. I'm working on it with them. And so we are expanding out these detox centers as we can get them. The big key is going to be if you go in right now today, the medical teams cannot get reimbursed for that service. But we're making some state changes to the Medicaid to allow them to get reimbursed. Once it becomes profitable for us to go into business and run one, people will do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand how how they have paid prisons.
Yeah.
Somebody hasn't done a paid.
Yeah. No,
Actually, they're not run very well, but.
Well, they're hard to run.
Yes.
It's not easy hiring. People don't like doing that work. It's hard work. I wouldn't want to do it. You had a question, Chuck?
Well, I was just saying, I think Central City, don't they have a detox?
We have small opportunities around
And
the
the
city.
Bouchon and Mighty Lakes.
Yeah, but just not on the magnitude that we need. I need to be able to pick someone up in a Portland Street Response van off the street corner and drop them off somewhere. I have walk-in opportunities everywhere. If you need to go right now, Char, we could get you in someplace. But if you're laying there on the street, to take you in by almost like an ambulance, there's no place to do the drop-off right now.
Has anybody thought about going to like Lewis and Clark or any other law school, since we have practically no
Best.
Attorneys to help people? Have them sign a contract for a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever they want to make it. They will be paid their salary, and the city will start paying off their student loan, depending on how long they've been there, what they want to commit to.
To do free law work?
For the defense people.
Public.
Yeah. There's options like that, not necessarily through the city, but like I even have volunteer lists. I worked at a little part-time in a homeless shelter in Las Vegas, and all you had to do was contact all the dentists in town and say, look, would you do one free dental visit a year? Most of them would say, I'll do one. Good. You can get a list of providers. It's not that hard. Even attorneys, would you take just one minor case? We've got those, so that's out there. But I like your idea, because that's not uncommon, where people do a service and have to come back and provide service and get their student loans paid off, as long as they come back to the city in which the city that needs them to do
Well,
work.
that's why the contract.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's good. That's a good idea.
I don't know. I always assume public defenders is also a responsibility of law firms and the legal bar of the state to provide for pro bono services.
Could be. It could be.
And if you want to do law in Oregon, you have to participate in the system. That's what it should be.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we have a lot of free legal service, especially for like eviction protection, where if you're getting evicted and you need an attorney to help you stay in your home, I think that service is like well funded and operational. I think that exists. I'm 99% sure that exists.
So, I just want to ask a question. So down on Nap, on the other side of the fence, there is a homeless camp down there.
Okay.
So who can I contact and say, these people, homeless people probably would like to have some kind of visit, I don't know, but they've torn down the fence, they've gone over to that property, or
Right.
is it the property owner? I don't know.
Well, anybody can call, and anybody can submit that one point of contact, and I can send it to you,
Oh, a
Shar.
PDX reporter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I have the team now in my office, basically. I sit in an office at the City Hall with the command team around me. So I know they're looking through that reporter all the time. If you email it,
You have Lucas Hillier in your office?
Lucas Hillier is moving into my office, yes.
Okay, good.
I work closely with
I
Lucas.
went him out at a meeting and he said he's gone all February
Well,
out of the country.
Well, we have replacements. He's not, and his business doesn't stop as soon as Lucas goes.
Okay, well, I need to get hold of him.
Put it into that PDX reporter and keep doing it. And I'll let him know I was out at Lentz, and I'll talk to Nate.
So, yeah, there's no address or anything, so I guess it's probably...
Yeah. I'll tell you what the priorities are. Critical infrastructure, pump stations, communication towers, hospitals, safe routes to school, where drugs and crime are obvious, where they're doing drug trades, which you pretty much go anywhere and sit and watch. So we've got a lot of work cut out for us. And so that's where we're kind of leaning on first. But that's not to say, if they're breaking down fences and moving into properties, that's an issue.
Yeah.
We don't want that. We're trying to get back to the point where we're doing beautification activities also at the same time. Somebody mentioned murals, and we call it activating spaces. If you've been downtown, we're really trying to activate a lot of spaces down there. Because if you don't, other bad people will occupy it. I'll take one more. You, sir, had a question.
Yeah, I work for a housing company in Vancouver, and we house a lot of homeless people.
Yeah.
I mean, I work in the buildings where they are, and we've had buku problems. I could go for 2 hours on the stuff we had. One instance, we had this gentleman, he got kicked out of the building for hitting people and stuff, besides $10,000 worth of damage to his apartment. But, okay, so the police pick him up, take him to jail, and the guy's dangerous.
Yeah.
And they say he's too mentally ill to keep in jail, so they turn him loose.
Yeah.
And that's probably not the only one, but I have a problem with that. There's no consequences for him.
Yeah.
And the guy is dangerous.
What are they doing to the property?
So what do you do in a case like that?
Well,
What's the answer to it?
so like I said, there's an evolution from when let's just take second-degree trespassing or something. From the time an individual is picked up by a police officer and what their journey is through the system. And if this is just the system in Oregon and in the city, if it's not a high enough crime, they're not going to get put in jail. They're not. They're going to be turned loose. And it's got to be pretty bad to end up being jailed in Portland. And I'm not telling you, I'm never going to sidestep your question and tell you, well, that's not my job, I don't know. I'm aware of it. We know where the weak spots are. If we want something different as a collective of people that live here, we run the government as the people, right? You're the people. My job is you elect a council person, and then that council person tells me what they want. What you tell them you want, they tell me what you want, and I go do it. Like right now, they want the houses and the gun violence down, and my job is to go fix it. If this is an issue big enough, I can't personally go out there and fix that problem. I don't work in the jails, I'm not part of that system. But there is a solution to that stuff. You are the power. You are the voice. You got the referendum on for the change of the charter review. You got the referendum on and passed it for the Police Accountability Commission. You evidently can get enough signatures to change possibly your toll thing. That's what you're going to do.
Yeah, we just want to get enough signatures to put it on the ballot.
All I'm saying is
yeah.
there are people responsible for all of these things we're talking about. Somewhere along the line, there's an elected official that will listen. And so that's one of the great things about living in America, especially in being in a neighborhood association, is you can have collective discussions about, what is your platform? What are the couple of things that you want to take on and have a strong voice about? And if it's like we don't like that people are doing this and are not being put in jail, then if that's what it is, then you need to bring that up and bring it. I mean, I'll talk about it. I personally, like I said, I don't run that part of the deal, but I will talk about it.
Mike, who would you suggest that we contact on that?
So the key people for that whole process, and it's complex. I mean, I had to learn it. I didn't understand it either. I come from a fire background, but so it does start with your police chief. It does start with your sheriff. It does start with city and county elected officials. There is a DA. There is also whoever's doing the recog stuff, your judicial judges up at the state that's writing the orders for the recog officer. So there are scattered throughout. It's just complex enough to make you lose your mind. But those are your people, right?
Email them or call their office. What do you suggest?
Well, I mean, however you would handle a normal problem that you are concerned citizen about, it's whoever you think will listen to you to get the conversation started. I've been having me here tonight, Mary and Jacob here. These are good things for you to hear what's going on, so you can okay, I don't like what I'm hearing, or I do like what I'm hearing. Either way, you can call somebody to tell them keep going. You can call somebody to tell them, hey, this is not right. This is not what our community wants. I do think that if we change to a city manager form of government, and you are electing someone from your neighborhood to be your council member, that's always, I thought, the bad thing about Portland is in most cities, I hope you know this, when you elect a council member, they have to live in your neighborhood.
Good idea.
Yeah, so you have a voice. Then you know who to call. Because you can have them here, this is your neighborhood, we elected you, and this is what we want. And that's, I think, going to be a huge, huge, huge asset for you. I really do.
We can find somebody to run.
You got to find somebody to run.
Sounds like an offer, Shar.
Yeah, who's
right.
raised their hand here?
Thank you, Shar. Is that good?
welcome.
All right, thank you. Yeah, all right, thank you.
Our meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for
Mary?
coming.